If you own XRP, Cardano's ADA, SUI, and virtually any other altcoin in the crypto market, this is absolutely massive. Donald Trump is asking the Supreme Court to let him fire top agency officials at 2 independent agencies. And the outcome of this would determine if Trump has the power to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and other agency officials. On top of that, the Treasury Department has started slashing numerous offices, including the IRS. U.S. Treasury bond servicing at the Bureau of Fiscal Service will now be outsourced. And as you guys already know, Trump's goal is to bring in more revenue to the country from these tariffs. And so research has shown a potential $500 billion drop in tax revenue by slashing up to 50% of enforcement staff from the IRS, which some people see as a negative thing. But on the flip side, some are arguing that downsizing government will make things more efficient and is a positive move because the U.S. federal spending is out of control. $7 trillion, and they're only bringing $5 trillion in tax revenue, leaving a federal budget deficit of $2 trillion. So in this video, we have to talk about what this means for the total altcoin market, where Bitcoin is in this macro market cycle compared to last cycles, and why things are actually looking pretty normal for the 4-year market cycle theory that we'll get into in a little bit. And what happened 92 years ago today with the President of the United States issuing an executive order that gave an obscene amount of power to the Federal Reserve. And what has happened since then with credit card debt, interest rates, and the GDP of the country, and what this means for the economy with this massive amount of debt just piling on top of itself. And the reason why we have the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor a reserve, it's a private bank that has been sucking all of our wealth and enslaving us in interest debt that is crippling American citizens, that is crushing this country. And even in an interview with Tucker Carlson, Treasury Secretary is saying they can even control the weather. So with inflation down massively, the next FOMC meeting coming up in 26 days, the Federal Reserve has to make a move on what they're going to do with interest rates. And with the government gearing up to buy $1 million in Bitcoin, we have a bold prediction from Charles Hoskinson for the price of Bitcoin this year or next. On top of that, we're going to dive into the chart for ADA. We have to talk about a bullish divergence for SUI taking place, and also expectations for XRP in the short term, the midterm, and the long term. Plus some extremely good news in the Ripple vs. SEC lawsuit that you need to know. And if you guys stick all the way to the end of this video, I'll share with you how you can get early access to our top altcoin picks, DeFi picks, and airdrop alerts to be able to make money and accumulate the best projects in the space before the next major move. So if you're feeling bullish, comment 777. If you're feeling blessed, comment 777. And if you're going to become the first millionaire in your family tree, you know what to do. Confirm it by tapping the subscribe button. Let's run it. April 15th, 2025. This is a huge date because it's the deadline for 2 high-paying tax credits that you probably haven't heard about, but you can still get if you take action right now. We've partnered with the relief consultants who are experts in the tax code who've recovered over $100 million for their clients so far. So if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, listen up so we can get you help and reach our goal of recovering $10 million for the BULLRUNNERS community before the April 15th deadline. So here's how it works. If you're a business owner who had employees in 2021, then you qualify for an average $150,000 check from the Treasury and possibly more with the Employee Retention Credit Program. So if you were told in the past that you don't qualify, get a second opinion now through the link in the description below this video, because there are rules and regulations that have changed just recently. So there's a high likelihood that you do qualify now. And if you sold your business or you shut it down, you still qualify as long as you were active in 2021. So don't miss out. Schedule an appointment with the link below. Just click business owner with employees if it applies to you. There's also a second tax credit that also ends April 15th. So this is for the BULLRUNNERS who are self-employed in 2021. So if you were a 1099, not W-2, and self-employment was your primary income, the Treasury check for this tax credit can go up to $32,220 with an average of $17,000. So if you were self-employed in 2021 and want to see if you haven't claimed this credit, which nobody has from our community thus far for some strange reason. We've been talking about this in several videos. I don't know, man. Maybe you just want the Treasury to keep your money. But if you want to get money back in your pocket, then schedule a consultation. Don't be lazy. Do this right now before April 15th through the link below. Just click self-employed if you think you qualify for both credits. Let the rep know on the call. And by the way, if you have your tax returns from 2020 and 2021 for this credit, it will be a faster turnaround for you. So have them ready on your call, and they can literally tell you if you qualify on your first call to get you paid. So if you need more money back in your pocket for this bull run, take action right now, click the link, and let's get you paid. All right, bull runners, welcome back to the channel. So looking at the total 2 chart on the weekly here, we can see that we have erased pretty much all of the gains that have taken place since the 4th of November. And we've come in all the way back down to this zone of support that we consolidated at between the 1st of July of 2024 until we broke out on the 4th of December. And so with this falling wedge right here, this is the most aggressive pullback that we have seen this bull run thus far, as we sit just below $1 trillion in market cap for the whole industry, aside from Bitcoin here. And so with the relative strength index sitting at 38 and with the MACD still in a downtrend, what we would want to see to get clear signs that the markets are going to reverse back to the upside would be a clear shift in momentum on the histogram, as you can see at the bottom of the screen right here, to go from red to light pink, similar to what we've seen in the past. For example, right here during the bear market from the 13th of June, you guys can see the momentum shift on the histogram here, where it went from red to light pink. And then we saw a short-term recovery in the market, followed by a continuation to the downside for the bear market bottom. Also, we saw the same thing right here after the 24th of January. The momentum shifted on the histogram while the markets recovered for this dead cat bounce right here, and then a continuation to the downside. So I do think a recovery is coming in the altcoin market, which would inevitably lead to the MACD line in blue rotating back around to intersect with the signal line. Simultaneously, the RSI seeing a bounce. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow, but I would expect that to happen over the next few months, even if we consolidate around here for a little bit, similar to what happened right through this range right here, through this range right here. We first have to establish where the low is in, and then we have to work our way through here before we see a bounce in the market. So generally, how these ranges tend to play out is we see the price action on the chart struggle to break a downtrend until it does, and then sometimes we see back tests followed by a trend reversal. In this case right here, you guys can see from the 17th of April, we form the high right here, and then we sell off and we form a lower high, which is a descending resistance. And you can see we just struggle to break that descending resistance multiple times, multiple points of contact, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points of contact until we inevitably broke above it on the 23rd of October. And so that could lead to either horizontal supports. As you can see, the support right here was at $495 billion, where the price wicked off multiple times. And right here from the 4th of September until the 11th of September, we see momentum shift on the histogram from bearish momentum in red right here, shifting back over to bullish momentum as the price reached the apex of this descending triangle. And a descending triangle has a descending resistance in a flat support line right here. And then we have a breakout level. Sometimes we'll see a throwback or a back test of the descending resistance before a trend reversal. In this case, we didn't, as the price formed 1, 2, 3 massive bullish candles, and then there was no back test. We just saw some volatility right here before the price broke all the way up to a new high and then consolidated for a period of time before continuing the uptrend. So the closer that we get to the apex, which is basically the end of the pattern right here, the closer we get to a massive breakout to the upside or the downside. For example, we can see that the total 2 chart has been in a downtrend since the 2nd of December, forming lower highs on the weekly, all through here struggling to make a new high in this falling wedge, which is lower lows and lower highs coiling up to the bottom of the wedge. And so because we've been in this downtrend for about 126 days, what we want to watch is momentum shifting on the MACD from bearish momentum back over to bullish momentum with shorter bars on the histogram over the next few weeks. This is what I would want to see while the price flattens out for a little bit, kind of similar to what happened right here, where we found the low on the 5th of August. And then after that, momentum started to shift on the histogram from bearish back over to bullish, back to the 0 line, while the price chart put in higher lows and kind of flattened out right here. But we were still in a downtrend because, as you can see, we just kept getting rejected from this descending resistance right here. And when we broke the downtrend, it was on the 4th of November, we exploded to the upside for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullish candles in a row. There wasn't a back test of this descending resistance. So in my opinion, when we see a reversal to the upside, it could happen very, very quickly. And we could see this MACD line turn right back around fast to intersect with the signal line for a bullish cross. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what would need to take place in order for that to happen. But if we look at Bitcoin's price chart right here, we can see from the high of the previous market in November of 2021, by the 7th of April, just a few days ago, that was 1,246 days from peak to where we currently are in the market cycle. And as you can see, we're coming back down to back test this ascending support right here. And also the previous range high from the 11th of March to like the 3rd of June for that consolidation phase. Now, if we look back to the last cycle where we were 1,246 days in from the peak, we were by the 10th of May experiencing a pullback from that run up in the market before the second rally to the all-time high for that bull run. So this tells us that there's still a few months left in this bull run just from the previous cycle. Now here's where things get interesting. If you guys look back to the cycle before then, the peak in 2013 to where we saw Bitcoin rally up to about $1,300 and come back down to 960 and just consolidate and see massive volatility right at this range right here between like March of 2017 until April of 2017. And then right after 1,246 days, we saw a massive explosion in the price. And then Bitcoin, of course, rallied to nearly $20,000 during that bull run cycle. So just looking at this from a macro market view, things are actually looking pretty normal. And we would need to see Bitcoin make a recovery in order for altcoins to follow. Now, that doesn't mean we can't experience volatility to downside. For example, look at this uptrend right here from the 17th of December. We broke drastically below the uptrend during COVID, and then it was a V-shaped recovery. So it doesn't mean we can't experience volatility for Bitcoin to come down to, $70,000, potentially even $55,000. It's definitely possible. We just don't know the outcome of Donald Trump's executive orders, because one day he says something, then the next day he says fake news, or they're putting a pause on tariffs. And so that just creates massive volatility in the markets. So we have to understand his hidden plan behind the scenes for why he's doing what he's doing and his goal to get the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. So to understand his plan, we need a little bit of history about the Federal Reserve, because 92 years ago today, the President of the United States issued an executive order requiring everyone to surrender their gold to the Fed within 4 weeks. And if they didn't, a $10,000 fine and 10 years of imprisonment was the prescribed punishment for people who opted to keep their gold. Can you guys imagine that? This was the beginning of an effort to unpeg the dollar from gold, thus allowing politicians and their banker friends to inflate the money supply without having to be constrained by the natural restraint on gold supply in existence. So the dollar has been substantially devalued since that time, which is what I call the ghost tax, which is a hidden tax on people's savings, masked as inflation, being the largest theft on a grand scale. And when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 1971, since then, the national debt has increased by 837x. Interest, or the cost of that debt, has increased by 559x. And GDP, which is the economic activity of which the debt can be serviced, increased by 202x. And so you can see in white the total government debt, in red the interest expense, and then in blue the GDP. And this is a big deal for you to know, because the staggering pace of new debt in terms of total outstanding in trillions of dollars, it took 221 years for total US debt to reach $12 trillion. And then the US added $12 trillion in debt since 2020 alone. And now the US national debt is over $36.7 trillion. That's $107,000 debt per citizen and $323,000 debt per taxpayer. And the problem that this creates is because they're issuing bonds, is the interest that's need to be paid on those bonds. They're not able to make enough money in order to do that from tax revenue, even from Doge, that's $302 billion. They have over $1 trillion right here, interest on debt for defense, war, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. And the unfunded debt in terms of interest right here, that's 5.3 in US total interest paid. Credit card debt has $1.3 trillion. And so something needs to change. And this is why Trump is asking the Supreme Court to let him fire top agency officials. In this case, is going to test a 90-year-old Supreme Court ruling that lets Congress shield high-ranking officials from being fired by the president. So if Trump gains this power, he could fire Jerome Powell, and he's already making massive power moves by slashing employees over at the IRS. So do you guys agree with what he's doing, or do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I thought this video was really interesting, and it shows why we have a Federal Reserve in the first place. Check this out.
Usury. Any interest rate is called usury. Usury is illegal. So in Christian nations, lending money for an interest rate was illegal. So because it was illegal for the Christians, who did the lending? The Jews. So there was Christians who could lend for 0% or didn't lend at all. And then these people called the Jews would come over and start lending money. They would start charging money. And in a couple generations, guess what would happen to the economy? The Jews owned everything. And then guess what the king did? Rounded them up and threw them out of the country. Then they go to the next country, and what would they do? Same thing. And what would that king do? Round them up, kick them out of the country. This went on for thousands of years. This is why the Jews in history have had no country. Because the king would have, they would say no usury, no money lending, and they would start the money lending, they would start the central bank to compete with the king would kick them out. They go to the next country, do it again. So this has happened over and over and over again because this quote right here from Napoleon, he would show the compound interest tables, and he said in a very short amount of time, compound interest would eat up every piece of property in France. In fact, I'm going to show you how powerful compound interest is. It's a very scary thing. And there's a reason why it was illegal. Illegal in the Christian nations and the Christian philosophy, because it would literally enslave people. Guys, the interest on credit cards enslave people today. Does student loans enslave people today? We no longer have forced slavery. We have debt slavery now. It is no longer forced slavery. There's not a massa with a whip whipping you anymore to pick cotton or something like that, or build wallets or whatever you're doing, build boats, all sorts of slavery. We now have debt slavery, where somebody prints money and you now have to pay the money back plus interest. Okay, so Pareto's principle. In Italy, an economist named Pareto noticed that 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the families. The start of modern banking was in Italy. You had the Jewish population there, and they would exchange gold for notes. And in Italy, you had the Pareto principle, where 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people. Who's heard of the 80-20 rule before? That's from Italy. And I want you to write this formula down. Time times compound interest equals power. And today, when you guys are investing in your game, we're going to be doing 30 years of investing over 3 days. So you got lots of time, and you have compounding numbers. So when you compound numbers over time, that becomes extremely powerful.
And so this is why we created Altcoin Pro University, to teach you guys how to compound your income through specific DeFi strategies. For example, when you click the link in the description below, you can watch this 26-minute video. After you get started, click in the community section, and you'll see different posts from our research team teaching you guys these DeFi strategies. For example, this one right here shows how to collect yield in JLP and USDC on Orca. And so Yoni put about $5,000 in. The current size with the yield is about 5,127. The time was about 9 days. His net profit was $112, and estimated monthly yield is about $383. So with this amount plus this strategy, you can make almost 4x the monthly cost that Altcoin Pro University costs. It's only $97 a month, guys. And so these type of strategies work during a bear market, during pullbacks, and during consolidations, if you don't want to have high risk on the table and have to worry about getting liquidated off of leverage trades. Now, as always, this is not financial advice. I'm not guaranteeing any income results for you. This is just an example. It's not a guarantee of income, because these videos are purely for educational, informational purposes only. As always, go consult your financial advisor, because crypto is definitely risky. You can lose money in these markets. For example, a while back, Bitcoin was over $100,000. And if you bought Bitcoin at $100,000, you're definitely down on your income right now. But here's a great post from Ryan inside of Altcoin Pro, sharing the truth about how this plays out in real time. Our research team has said that this opportunity would come. They said that the prices would drop. And they also said that most people would not take advantage of it. Well, here we are. Prices are down. Fear is at an all-time high for retail investors. And the same people who wished for lower entries months ago have now disappeared. You can even see it based on the number of Altcoin Pro community members dropping a bit. We had some members quit, which is expected, because when the markets pull back, retail investors panic and they run. And those are the same people that said they'd buy the dip, but when it showed up, they vanished. So we have one question for you. What kind of person are you going to be? Will you be one of the ones who acts when everyone else is excited? Or will you be one of the ones who leans in when it's uncomfortable, when the market is quiet, when the fear of missing out is gone, when conviction is the only thing that remains? We've always found ways to make money in bear markets than in bull markets. And why? Because conviction compounds in silence. Not saying we are in a full-out bear market, by the way, right now. That conviction comes from having the proper information and knowledge, and also from taking action on that knowledge, from showing up when it's hard, not when it's hyped up and when it's easy and when everyone's getting in. The next pump will belong to those who stick around now. Crypto isn't going anywhere. That's very clear. Blockchain technology is here to stay, but many people have already dipped out. They've already left. So don't let your old self make the same mistake. Take Altcoin Pro seriously, guys. Lean into the community. Build the strength now to become unshakable later. We're still early, but only for the ones who are still here. And so Ryan got about 53 comments on this post. I thought this was great. Give it a like right here. And for those of you that are still plugged in with the community right here, that's how you make the most amount of money, is just having more time in the markets than everybody else. For example, the people that bought all the way up here between December and January of 2025, most of them are leaving the markets because they're down right now. It's just like the people who bought in March, those people left the markets by August to September of 2024 because they were down. Whereas the people that saw dips like this as an opportunity, that backed up the truck and bought during August of 2024, are still up on their income even with this pullback. Even the people who bought all the way in October of 2023, they're drastically up on their portfolio. Even the people who bought in December of 2022 during that pullback for the bear market bottom. Every single pullback like this plays out time and time and time again. And guys, this pullback, in my opinion, is no different. I think we're going to see a bounce in the market. And if you want to learn how to capitalize on it, get started with Altcoin Pro. Like I said, it's only $97, or you can pay yearly. You're going to save $194. You unlock 2 exclusive bonuses, and you'll get access to our research team's top altcoin picks, DeFi yields, airdrop alerts, and connect and network with other people in our community from around the world. Our goal and our mission is to grow the largest intellectual crypto investor community in the world and to set the gold standard for crypto education. Because they don't educate you about this stuff in school. And school is boring. You're not learning the stuff that you want to learn or the stuff that's really going to make you wealth in this day and age. Whereas Altcoin Pro University, we teach you the stuff that actually works. Check this out. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent revealed to Tucker Carlson that the Federal Reserve has been pushing DEI, forcing regulatory policies and climate change. They've also been allowing banking executives to serve on the board so they won't regulate banks, which is why Donald Trump wants to fire the Fed. The Federal Reserve needs to be abolished. Inflation has been down massively, and Truflation is showing the U.S. inflation index at 1.34% below the Fed's target, so they need to cut rates. Now, if we go to the CMEgroup.com here, in 26 days, the next FOMC meeting is coming up on the 7th of May, and 72.6% are expecting them to keep rates steady again. So this number is now back up to keeping rates paused. So by June 18th, that meeting, 63% are expecting a rate cut. And then by July, later in the summer, most people all the way till September are expecting a deeper rate cut. So the Fed is most likely to be cutting rates from June to September, but the 7th of May, that meeting is still in question. So we might stay within this range for a little bit longer. And the recovery that I talked about, I believe is still coming because the 4-year market cycle theory leads us into like September to November this year. So that's a little more than half of April. Then we have May, June, July, August, September. So we have like 5.5 to 6 months until September. So I think there's going to be a massive rally leading into the end of the year when the Fed finally starts to cut rates. And the real question is, will that push us to a new all-time high or a dead cat bounce for a lower high before the bear markets? Either way, the American government is gearing up to buy a lot of Bitcoin. Listen to this.
Bitcoin Act establishes the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, a federal initiative to ensure that the United States holds a meaningful position in the most important decentralized financial network on Earth. With an eye to fiscal responsibility and innovation, the legislation outlines a plan to phase in the acquisition of up to 1 million Bitcoin, or roughly 5% of its total final supply over 5 years. Importantly, this will be done without raising taxes or increasing government debt. The Bitcoin Act is designed to be budget neutral, relying on Federal Reserve remittances, which exceeded $76 billion in 2023, gold certificate revaluations, unlocking additional capital without new spending, and updates to the Exchange Stabilization Fund. These mechanisms allow us to build a strategic reserve without burdening taxpayers, while also potentially offsetting long-term national debt.
So if their goal is to offset long-term national debt, then their goal would also be to pump the heck out of Bitcoin, which would pump altcoins. Why would they buy something and then want it to go down? That's why Donald Trump is forcing the Fed's hand to lower interest rates, because when there's lower interest rates, money's cheaper. When money's cheaper, people are able to take out more loans, more money is printed, which basically means more money flows into riskier assets like stocks and crypto. And so listen to what CEO of Cardano, Charles Hoskinson, said about Bitcoin recently.
No, I think Bitcoin will be over 250,000 by the end of this year or next year.
What's going to drive that, do you think?
What will happen is that the tariff stuff will be a dud, and then people will realize that the world is willing to negotiate, and it's really just U.S. versus China, and a lot of people will side with us, some people will side with China. The markets will stabilize a little bit, and they'll get used to the new normal.
So do you guys agree with him or do you disagree? There's going to be a new normal for tariffs and people are going to become desensitized to this. And if we look at Cardano's chart, we see Cardano broke out, with that Trump news, obviously, and it rallied to over $45 billion. And now it's at $21 billion. But we saw something like this happen last bull run. around July of 2020 until November of 2020 until Cardano broke out again. You guys can see the bear market low right here in December. You can see the rally of 2019 for DeFi summer coming back up to this resistance of where the support was before the B recovery wave. So the resistance was this A wave right here. Then we saw the B dead cat bounce. Then we saw the C wave bottom. And so we just rallied back up into the A wave right here, got rejected, formed a lower low for Cardano, even though Bitcoin was forming a higher low for COVID. Then we broke resistance right here, back tested this zone that Cardano could not break above during the April of 2019 to July of 2019 as support, worked our way through here and then broke out to the previous all-time high. So I think that's what's coming for ADA, because look at the chart right now. You guys can see during the bear market, we see the A wave right here, the B wave for the high, the C wave to the bottom. So the A wave is right around like 28 to $30 billion. What's interesting about this is after the C wave was in, we rally all the way up here by March of 2024 to the A wave as resistance. Pretty much exactly what we did all the way back here in 2019, we did right here by February of 2024. We sell off from there, then we break out, we clear that high, just like we did right here. We did the exact same thing by the 2nd of December right here. And now we're just pulling back within this range right here. And so these supports and these resistances aren't 100% accurate, but we can see some similarities here. So when we see the bounce for the altcoin market and we start working our way through here until the Fed starts to cut rates, the real question is if we clear this high from December of 2024 and we go all the way back to retest the high of 2021, which is $100 billion. So that's a 5x from where we are right now in terms of market cap. And depending on what the Fed does over the next few meetings for their interest rates and how much they start adding to their balance sheet will really determine how high something like ADA goes towards the tail end of this bull run leading into Q4 of this year. Same thing for SUI, because if we look at SUI's chart right here, SUI is following its 2024 falling wedge step by step. The relative strength index is flashing a bullish divergence as well too. So is a breakout for SUI brewing as well? Because by August of 2024, when I showed you guys with Bitcoin, when SUI finally broke out, it rallied over $5. And SUI is a leading layer one for this bull run. So I think when Bitcoin bounces, that's going to flow into the large caps. ADA will see a recovery, SUI will see a recovery, and also I think XRP will see a recovery. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be volatility in the short term because we're still in a downtrend right here. So XRP has just been making lower highs and lower lows. So there's definitely a possibility for us to come back down within $1.75. I would not be surprised if that were to happen because the relative strength index is in a downtrend as well too. We would need to see this descending resistance get cleared for a trend reversal. Otherwise, I would just expect it to come back down closer to 30. Once we see something like this take place and the RSI flips this downtrend and the price sees a massive move above this descending resistance and does something like this, that would be a sign for me that we're gearing up for a much bigger move to the upside. Otherwise, we're just going to see the bears suppress the price for XRP in this downtrend. So I wouldn't be accumulating XRP right now just because it's kind of like catching a falling knife right now. I wait for trend reversals. So a major trend reversal will be clearing $2.55 all the way up here, even $2.80, and then holding this zone as support. Otherwise, XRP is just going to do stuff like this, get suppressed, and then work its way through this range before it finally breaks this descending resistance. So worst case scenario for XRP, I mean, we come all the way back down to where we were all the way back here for the complacency stage bounce. That's like $1.35, or where we were during this range right here, like $1.50, $1.55. That's definitely possible. So for me to buy more XRP, I would want to see XRP down within that range because common sense suggests you don't make money buying high and selling low. That's how you lose money. You make money buying low and selling high. It just takes patience. The problem is, just like I mentioned from Ryan's post inside of Altcoin Pro, is most people lack patience. They say they're going to buy the dip, then when the dip comes, they leave, they panic, they exit. When some of the bullish news is taking place behind the scenes from a fundamental perspective, for example, the New York Stock Exchange just approved 2 XRP ETFs. On top of that, the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit is now officially held in abeyance. This means all proceedings, including the April 16th briefing, are paused pending resolution of another key matter. And so this will lead to a resolution in this lawsuit because why would 11 of the biggest asset managers overseeing $240 billion file XRP ETFs if they didn't think a resolution was coming, if XRP wasn't going to be around long term? So it's only a matter of time. The key to making money in these markets is to have patience, obviously, not only back up the truck for the dip, But get started with Altcoin Pro University so you know what opportunities are going to receive the largest liquidity injections when they come. We have 100 plus expert curated classes. They're really easy to go through, simple to understand. They're fun to watch. Our research team has done an incredible job on this. They're constantly sharing market updates. We got airdrop picks, DeFi yield picks, and even community picks too from some whales in our community that are spotting under the radar altcoin gems. For example, our research team posted GOAT on the 13th of October of 2024 when it was right at a penny, and since then it rallied to over $1, 5,000%. That's like turning $1,000 into over $50,000. Our team called Pendle at only a $16 million market cap, or 16 cents, back on February 18th of 2023, all the way back here, and since then it's rallied up over 4,000%. That's a 40x. It's like turning $1,000 into over $40,000. Our team also called BitTensor Tau September 15th, 2022, before the token was ever even launched. And since then, Tau has rallied over 2,000%. That's a 20x. Our team even said Solana is most likely to be one of the easiest trades next year, and this was posted December 29th, 2022, on the day that Solana bottomed out at around $8. And since then, Solana looks like it's up over 2,500%. That's a 25x. It's like turning $1,000 into over $25,000. The list goes on and on and on. Our team called SUI, Ondo, and even some of the biggest cult-based meme coins like MOG back in July 20th of 2023, the day that MOG launched. So if you want to learn how our team is finding these altcoins before they explode, we just launched Altcoin Pro University, where our research team gives you real-time altcoin picks with explosive potential for this bull run, along with 100 plus expert curated classes crafted by industry experts to discover these gems yourself, on top of our live weekly calls every single week for in-depth crypto market analysis and daily updates. And that's just a fraction of what we offer inside of Altcoin Pro University through the link below. And although we make no guarantees because crypto is definitely risky, guys, this is only $97 a month or $970 a year. If you want to save $194, getting 2 months for free and unlock some exclusive bonuses, just go through the link in the description below. Get in right now. Watch the 26-minute video covering everything that Altcoin Pro University offers to help you become the first millionaire in your family tree, if that's a goal of yours. And you can get started through the link in the description below right now, or you can go to bullrunners.com to take advantage of the bonuses we're giving you before they expire. Everyone is loving the community. They're loving the education. They're getting access to real-time altcoin picks first before we ever make videos about them. So click the link in the description below, watch the video, and I'll see you on the inside.